legislative process. There's a 12-member council that will decide who gets these grants. And I can assure you that, again, we're going to spend a lot of money just trying to monitor how this stuff is being spent, and that will consume tremendous amounts of money. But it's such a vast amount of money, and we have no idea. You read that language in the bill or on the ballot, it is so vague. There is no definition to how that will be spent. Will it be used to buy up lands that you as sportsmen would like to hunt on, but they'll be considered wilderness and you'll no longer have access to them? Will it be used to bring lawsuits? Will it go to the Sierra Club for more lawsuits? Will it be spent for citizen monitors? The law that we are funding says there's money for citizens to monitor, or NGOs. That's a non-governmental organization, which again could be the Minnesota Environmental Partnership or any of their vast minions, to do citizen monitoring, to comb through private property, to find, what might be happening that somehow is not in compliance. So we don't know how the money's going to be spent, and those people, those sportsmen who thought this is the great solution for our habitat, have no idea what they bought into.
Larry Redmond, did legislators give up their final say in this?
No, absolutely not. And to get some facts just absolutely clear here, there are some councils that are set up, some citizen councils, a terrible concept, citizen councils that are set up that affect to one portion of the money, not all of the money. And by the way, but those citizen councils make reports to the people who make the final decisions as to how that money is going to be spent, and that would be the Minnesota legislature. They're the ones who will make those decisions in the final end. So those are in places. The other thing, if I can, just to be clear about a few things, there's about $500 million a year for the DNR's budget. That covers everything we do. But, as I said earlier, our pollution control agency has established, and no one's ever disputed this number, that there is $100 million a year cost in cleaning up the waters because we have not been dealing with them for the 36 years when we established that we had to. $100 million a year for 25 years that we have to do that. The reason there's a 25-year span on this amendment is because of that. But that $100 million is not being appropriated. The legislature, some years they come up with $5 million, some years they come up with $10 million, but it's not there. This amendment deals with that issue. And by the way, the arts, which got cut 32% the last time we had a budget shortfall, have a budget of $10 million. Now that's a lot of money. But I have to tell you, in this state, which is one of the largest cultural communities in the country, including right here in Duluth, that amount of money really is pretty significant. It is not an overwhelming number in a $17 billion a year annual budget.
You four could go on forever talking without any more questions. Let's get to the audience questions in here. You can just
real quickly
jot this down for the closing, because we need to move on to the audience questions. We have more than we can handle here.
Okay.
Let's just start with the two of you on the yes side on this one. What guarantees that if this amendment passes, the legislature would not cut existing funding, such as could happen this coming legislative session, since we would expect a fairly sizable deficit? Existing funding for the programs that would be included here. Dave Zettner?
Well, the funding that would come as a result of Vote Yes being successful, the language in the legislation that created this opportunity indicates that, and I'm reading now, the dedicated money under this section must supplement traditional sources of funding for these purposes and may not be used as a substitute. Now, I would assume a lawyer would tell me very quickly, he or she or they, that it's very difficult for this legislative action to bind in perpetuity future legislators. But it's very clear what the intent of this legislature is that this money is to supplement, not supplant. Also, this money, when we talk about the moves that were made with the Environmental Trust Fund, the so-called lottery money, every one of those moves to reduce that fund's effectiveness away from its natural resources intent was done by the legislature under the statutory portion of it, not under the Constitution. all of this revenue, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, will be constitutionally dedicated and not available for some other manipulation by a governor or the legislature. And then finally, I want to read one other thing. There was a statement about who knows what these projects will be for, what the land will be purchased, and whether we'll be able to use it. The legislation says, land acquired with fee money deposited in the Outdoor Heritage Fund under this section must, I repeat, must be open to the public taking of fish and game during the season unless otherwise prohibited. The otherwise prohibited obviously refers to the state regulatory authority of the Department of Natural Resources to open and close seasons. Thank you.
Senators, any quick response for that? Otherwise, I have a question for you.
Well, I do, and I think it's important to realize how much is being left out of the picture that we're hearing. I think, and the legislature often makes this mistake, which is to ignore the private sources of money that go for both the arts and the out-of-doors. And one, I think, very illustrative example is that based on the Wetlands Conservation Act, we are now at a no net loss of wetlands. And so there's a state inventory that's kept. But there's also a private inventory that's kept, and people like the Nature Conservancy and so many other private organizations are buying land and funding the conservation of land and so on, and you have federal programs as well. The state inventory does not calculate what the private sector is doing. That is not part of their information, technically. So when they say, you know, we're not gaining any wetlands, they aren't looking at the thousands of wetlands that are coming into the inventory from private sources. And so you see that happening on both art side and out-of-door side. And it's a very flawed picture. The private landowner, people who live on lakes, people who live on waters, are spending a lot of money to keep those waters clean. And I think folks like Zentner and other proponents choose not to realize that.
Both you former senators, really quickly, would you vote, if you're still in the Senate, would you vote for a straight-up tax increase to fund these issues that are on the ballot?
I don't think so. I think you'd have to, I mean, if you saw it in a bill for that legislative session and knew what it would be spent for, that's a very different matter. And I think it's always, I mean, every legislative session, you would have some new information and some higher priority and a different mix of priorities. So it would depend.
Any different answer, Terry Ruth?
Well, you know, I think she's right. It really does depend how it looks. And I will tell you, you know, I've worked on this issue for my 4 years in the Senate. I'm not new to the issue. I was the liaison for our caucus to the Minnesota Outdoor Heritage group. But I will tell you that I actually voted for this mess once when I was down there. And that was when Senator Dallas Sams was the head of the Environment Committee. And Senator Sams, rest his soul, was one of the best senators we had for the environment and for the state of Minnesota. He was excellent to work with. And he told us that if we would vote for this and get it into his committee, he would make sure that it would come out the way it was intended. 1/8 of 1% of the existing sales tax for sportsmen. And if it could not come out of his committee looking that way, it would not come out at all. And it did not.
You're not in the legislature, but I assume you want to say something about this. If you'd vote yes or no for a straight-up tax increase.
For this? Yeah, I'm planning to in November. I'm going to vote yes. That's what it says right here.